Okay, welcome back to another edition of My Car Guru. I feel like I'm kind of on the brink of something here, folks. In my research for this particular edition, I've been thinking about depreciation and whether or not I should just go ahead and recommend that you never buy another new car. Now that's hard because I'm a new car dealer. I have a Ford dealership and a Nissan dealership. And I guess it depends on how you look at the automobile. You know, I look at them differently because I am really into the vintage cars. And when I buy vintage cars, they rarely go down in value. I look at them more like a share of Apple stock or, Bitcoin. Well, I don't invest in Bitcoin, but I do invest in Apple stock, one of many. But I expect it to go up in value over time, and it has. It's done really well. Not lately, but it's overall since I bought it, it's done very good, and I get dividends. But I think about an automobile. It's a pretty big purchase. You know, you're going to throw down. Well, I mean, I was looking at what was that? I was looking at one of those Mavericks. We have a Maverick hybrid that just came in. Beautiful, kind of a safari tan color. I like it. I never thought I could like tan, but this is kind of a muted tan color that's not offensive. It's not like gold, but it's a hybrid, and it's pretty expensive for a Maverick. It's got custom wheels on it. Well, they come with this Lariat package, but I think it is an upgraded wheel. It's an all-wheel drive hybrid, which is this 2025 is the first year they've offered that. And it's got leather seats. I mean, it's really nice. It's $40,000. Now, what is that vehicle going to be worth a year from now? Well, I was just looking at depreciation numbers in general. And average depreciation over 5 years for new vehicles is approximately, it's that they'll lose 60% of their value over 5 years. When I say their value, I mean their original MSRP, okay? The breakdown by year is that the average vehicle, now, that we're talking about a lot of different things lumped in together in this country. We're talking about small trucks, big trucks, vans, passenger cars, small cars, big cars. Well, they don't sell big cars anymore. But, just pretty much everything thrown into one big pot. How much is it going to depreciate? 20% the first year, 12% the second year, 11% the third year, 9% the fourth year, and 7% the fifth year. So you can see it definitely goes down as far as the percentage of depreciation, but still, that yields a residual of approximately 45% of MSRP at the end of 5 years. Now, you don't drive Apple stock. You can't jump in some shares of IBM Computer Company and drive it down the road. So there is a utility involved in ownership of a vehicle. So yes, it is going down in value, but you're getting where you need to go. You're getting to your job, you're going on vacation. It may be an image boost for you. There's a lot of different reasons people buy cars and do things to them. And, for some people that I can't relate to, it's just a way to get from point A to point B. We would probably, you would be bored if you were in a waiting room and you and I were sitting there trying to strike up a conversation. You wouldn't want to talk about anything that I want to talk about, because usually what I want to talk about is cars and the car business. So anyway, but if you're that kind of person, then, you're lost. But if you were the kind of person that, just really enjoys cars, you buy a Ford Bronco, you want to lift it, you want to put different wheels on it and add all kinds of accessories, and you just enjoy taking the doors off of it and, going off-roading. It's a part of your life. It's your car life, right? Then you're not so much concerned about the investment. But should you be? Well, in many circumstances you should, especially if you have to finance that purchase. Let's say you have nothing down. There's no rebate on what you're interested in, and you have to finance it for 84 months at 7.9% interest if you have decent credit in order to be able to afford the monthly payment, and you can barely afford it. Now, there are trade-offs involved. I mean, is this something that's worth it to you? And this is where I'm at the brink here of really getting you to think about leasing vehicles. Now, I know I'm hearing the pushback already because I'm not renting a car. It's that whole attitude. But, what's the best use of your money? Especially if you are liquid. You have plenty of cash. You've got it in the bank. Or hopefully not. Unless you have a good CD rate, maybe 4.5%, 5%. But if you don't, and you are invested in the stock market, and have other things that are working for you, maybe you can invest in real estate or whatever. Does it make sense to pool the money, the liquid cash that you have out of those investments, and invest it in something that's going to lose 60% of its value in 5 years? As opposed to that, you could lease a vehicle under some of these really good lease programs that a lot of different companies have, and you can let them suffer the depreciation. I mean, you're paying for it. The way leases are constructed and calculated, I should say, is pretty straightforward. You take the MSRP, or whatever you can buy the car for, that's called the capitalized cost, and you take a percentage of that. It's called the residual value, and that's what the leasing company looks at in order to determine the amount of depreciation this vehicle is expected to have over that period. So you may have a Honda Accord, and after 2 years or a 3-year lease, they think it's going to depreciate 33%. Then you take that number times the MSRP, and that gets you your amount of depreciation. Divide that by the 3 years, and that's your monthly payment, with the exception of the interest charge. There is an interest charge, but sometimes it's really low. Sometimes they call it a money factor. Same thing. And you add that little bit, which usually isn't much, to that depreciation amount, and then add sales tax on that, and that is your monthly payment on that vehicle. You get to drive it for 3 years. You can establish how many miles you want your lease to include. I wouldn't lease a vehicle with my driving habits. I'm going to drive 15,000 miles a year. So I don't want to pay a mileage penalty at the end. I don't want to have to pay any extra. So on a 3-year lease, I'll do 45,000 miles, 15,000 miles a year. Well, what if you drive 20,000 miles one year? Well, you just drive less the next year. Or you pay a 15 or 20 cent per mile penalty at the end. I call it a penalty. It's just a charge. If you go over on miles, then the company that you're leasing the car from is going to take that vehicle to the auction, and they're going to have a penalty because of those miles, and they don't want to have to eat it, so they're going to charge you for it. That makes sense. So let's review real quickly. You've got the MSRP, which is what the residual value percentage is based on. You've got the capitalized cost, which is what you're paying for the car. You have the residual value. You have the money factor, and then you have the term. And you calculate the monthly payment, figure out what the sales tax is going to be. That's another thing, that if you buy a car, you're going to pay sales tax on the full amount, or the trading difference between the purchase price and the car that you're trading in. On a lease, you don't pay sales tax on the whole car. You just pay sales tax on each monthly payment. So you end up paying a whole lot less as far as sales tax is concerned. And if you're financing a car when you buy it, you're financing the sales tax too. So here's what you do when you go to the dealership. You say, I want to look at this both ways. I want to look at it if I buy it and if I lease it. And here's the secret language that the dealership won't share with you. You say, I want the purchase price that we negotiate to be the same number as the capitalized cost that the lease is based on. He's going to say, how do you know about that? And you're going to say, well, I listened to this yahoo on the radio, and he's told me to pay attention to the capitalized cost because that's the key number. Okay, I'm going to take my first break. I'll be back, and we'll keep going on this in just 1 minute. Okay, I'm back. You know, the number one reason that I hear people not want to lease a car is because they equate it to renting a car. So what do they equate buying a car and financing it 60 months or 84 months or whatever? Do they really own the car? I mean, it's titled in their name, but if they miss a couple payments, the bank's going to come get it. So you don't own it until you make the final payment on it and they send you the title. And the thing about it is, folks, most people trade more often than the term of their loan. I mean, there's only about 20% of the people that actually keep the car to the full term. Most people trade before that. So they never really own it anyway. They never get the title. And they've paid all of that money on interest. They have suffered all of that depreciation because it's on them. You know, when they go to trade that car, they're going to go up to some dealership and they're going to write an appraisal and come up with a number on that car, and they're going to look at that customer's going to look at that number that they're getting for their car, the actual cash value, and look at their payoff, and they'll say, uh-oh, I'm upside down. I owe more on this car than it's worth. How's that going to work out? Well, they're going to take that difference between your payoff and the ACV on that car, and they're going to add it to your next loan. What's that do to your monthly payment? Well, it depends on how upside down you are. I mean, I've seen people $20,000, $25,000 upside down. They bought a car that depreciates rapidly. They financed it for a very long term, and they paid nothing down. And then 3 years later, they're trying to trade it because they like to trade every 3 years, and they can't because they have too much what we call negative equity or being upside down. You know how upside down you are at the end of a 3-year lease? 0. And you can trade, well, you don't trade, you can jump into another lease at that point and hand them the keys and walk away, and you've got no more liability unless you beat the car all to pieces. You know, because when you lease a car, just like if you own a car, you want to take care of it, the lease company expects you to take care of that car. So if it has curb rash on the wheels and dents all over it and a busted windshield, you're going to have to pay for those. But hopefully, as those things were occurring, you would have taken care of them along the way. And then at the end of the lease, you've got a nice pristine car that you can turn in. You know, if you're going to go off-roading all the time, or, you know, you're really hard on a car, you know, you just beat it up and really don't care about the vehicle, then you're not going to like leasing. I mean, they want people who take reasonable care of their vehicles. It's called normal wear and tear. Now, if you have a few door dings and stuff like that, that's expected. They're not going to beat you up for that. But if the tires are worn completely out when you turn the car in, they're going to put a set of tires on it and they're going to charge you for it. So what you do is you just do that ahead of time instead of letting them overcharge you for a set of tires. So there's really no unusual expectations of the lease company. Now, if you go over on miles, let's say that it was like what I was talking about, a 3-year lease, 15,000 miles a year, total of 45,000 miles were included in the lease, but I put 50,000 miles on it. What happens? Well, there's always that residual value. If I want to keep that car, I can buy it for the residual value. I pay sales tax on that amount, and the car's mine. I can pay cash for it at that point, or I can finance it at that point, or I can just say, here's the keys and walk away. I just love the options of that. That just sounds really good to me. But the problem is the average customer, when you just say, oh, you know, you don't even get the full word leasing out. You just go, and there's no, not done it. So don't be that way. Say, sure, give me a lease quote. Explain it in detail and make sure that the selling price of the vehicle that we've already agreed to is the same as the capitalized cost. I want to know what the residual value is going to be, and I want to know what all the other charges are, what the mileage limitations are, because they can quote you a 10,000-mile lease. I guess they could quote you a 5,000-mile lease per year, but, I mean, most people would need more mileage than that. A lot of the advertised leases that you see, like for Toyota and Honda and Ford or whatever, they're using 10 to 12,000 miles, which I just don't think that's enough for the average driver, but it might be for you. I want a quote at 15,000 miles for my driving, but you may want one for 25,000 miles because in 3 years you're going to put 75,000 miles on it. Go ahead and get a quote, see what it is. Now, your payment might be higher than what your payment would be if you were to purchase the vehicle outright, but you don't have to worry about the value of it at the end of 3 years. I mean, if you buy it and you've put 75,000 miles on the vehicle, it's going to depreciate a whole lot faster than those percentages that I was talking about earlier. Wouldn't it be great if you could eliminate all the risk that's in your life right now? I'm not talking about health or anything, but it's talking about financial risk. And that's what insurance companies do. I mean, the only reason they're willing to give you $1 million life insurance policy is they think that you'll never need it, or that you'll pay enough money in to be able to fund it so that when they finally pay out, when you kick the bucket, they finally pay out, they've made enough money on your money where it doesn't really matter. Banks do the same thing with interest rate. They'll charge certain customers a higher rate of interest because they don't pay as good and there's a greater chance of a default on the loan. All that's about mitigating risk. When you lease a vehicle as opposed to buy it, you're mitigating risk. You're putting the risk on somebody else. But you've got to do your part. You've got to maintain the car. And if you're, like I say, if you're a person that just, you don't change your oil when you should, and, you don't really care about the exterior appearance, maybe you're from France. From what I understand, people from France don't take care of vehicles. I'm just kidding. I saw that on Grand Tour. Jeremy Clarkson was making fun of French people because they just destroy their cars. If you're like that, then don't lease a car. Buy it, destroy as you will. But if you're not French, then get a lease quote. I think it makes sense. Okay, I'll take my last break. I'll be back here in just 1 minute. My daughter Abby just leased her 2025 Expedition. She leased her last one also. What she does is kind of interesting. She's got this group of friends that live in Nashville and quite a few around Greenville in East Tennessee that they all drive big vehicles like Expeditions and Navigators and Suburbans and stuff like that. Well, she knows that she has a 3-year lease, and when she gets about 2.5 years, she starts contacting her friends and see if anybody would like to buy her off-lease vehicle. And so far, fingers crossed, the last 4 or 5 that she's done, she's had them all pre-sold. And even though she was a little over on miles, she didn't have to pay it because she was able to flip that vehicle immediately to one of her friends. And, their friends get a good buy on a vehicle, and she gets to get a brand new vehicle every 2 to 3 years. Another reason she did that is because she calculated the purchase payments on, I think it was 60 months and 72 months, and the payments were going to be about $1,100 a month, and if she leased it, they were going to be about $850. I know that sounds like a big car payment, but the vehicle lists for, it was like $85,000 or $90,000, big Expedition. So we own a car dealership. It makes it real easy. But if you walk into a car dealer and, you immediately start talking monthly payments and all that stuff, that's where you're going to get taken advantage of. Find the vehicle that you're interested in. I'm just assuming that you have good credit, okay, or decent credit. And find the vehicle that you're interested in, and then go test drive them. Make sure that you like it, and then negotiate a sales price on the vehicle. If you have a trade-in, you've got to know what your actual cash value of your trade is, and then negotiate a selling price. And then once you get that selling price and that deal down, say, okay, I want to look at this financed for 72 months, and I want to see what a 36-month lease would be on it as well. Just make sure that you use the same selling price as the capitalized cost. So you get that information from the salesperson, you look at the numbers side by side, and you make a decision. And you can negotiate both of them. One other thing that you need to do is that the dealership can mark up the interest rate that they're using. It doesn't matter what bank they're from. They can actually Well, some credit unions won't let you do that, but most dealers, when they finance through a bank, one of these big regional banks, they can mark up the rate anywhere from 1 to 2 percentage points. Make sure that you ask them, now, is this your buy rate with the bank? Those are the key words. Is this your buy rate, or have you marked up the interest rate on this loan? And is this the actual money factor that's available from the manufacturer? This would be on the lease, okay? Or have you marked up the lease money factor? You know, what you'll do is you'll get this look like a deer in the headlights. His eyes will get really wide because the salesperson doesn't know. But he's going to turn around and go talk to that guy behind curtain number 3 that you don't get to talk to. And he said, these people are talking a language that I don't understand. They're talking about money factor markups and buy rates. Can you come and talk to these folks? More than likely, the person that you're going to be talking to is going to be the finance manager. And they know that you know what you're talking about when you use these terms. If you have to go back and listen to this again, go to the podcast and listen to it, or if you're listening on the radio. But yeah, this is money saving stuff here. This is insider secrets that you're learning from a real live new car dealer. I'm going to go ahead and put these keywords on my Facebook page, my Car Guru group. It's called My Car Guru. It's not hard to find if you're on Facebook. And you can join that group, and I will post these. I post all of the podcast on that as well. But you can join that group if you're on Facebook, and you will see these terms that you can use when you're in a car dealership, and it'll really help you navigate the twists and turns that can happen. You know, and then if you feel uncomfortable about it, you're just not all the way there, you feel a little bit confused, stop. It's, you know how they say when you catch fire, stop, drop, and roll? Well, you need to just stop, get your keys, and go get in your car and come back home and think about it, or give me a call, send me a text, and we'll get you straightened out. 423-552-2020, or you can send me an email to LennyLawson2020@gmail.com, and I'll see you on the next edition of My Car Guru.